I see my man in the background. I always call him the best in the business, Mark Sleboda, International Relations Security Analyst. You can find him on Boosty, Boosty, under Realpolitik with Mark Sleboda. Or if you just put in his name, Mark Sleboda, he will appear. Mark, how you doing today, man? You doing okay today?
Jamaro, I'm alive. How the hell are you? Thanks for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the show.
I am alive. I am intact. I can't have any. I don't have any complaints. So we will go with that. Thank you for joining me, man. I always appreciate these conversations. I guess the first question, since I titled the video, the Black Hawk Down disaster from the standpoint of Kiev, I was fascinated by that. And just as a primer for the audience, they bring in two helicopter, I call them incursions. The first one, they put the people down, special forces, they get slaughtered almost right off the bat. Apparently, Russia is watching the entirety of the whole thing. 2 days later, October 30th, they do it again using, I think it was either 2 or 3 Black Hawks. There's some reports that one of the Black Hawks was taken out. Either way, everybody on the ground had been killed, and the mission obviously failed. What is going on with this? Give us details of this, because 20 men is not going to change the situation in Pokrovsk.
Yeah. Okay. So, there are varying reports. I've heard two helicopters, right? UA-60s, full of special forces, and I've heard 3. I don't have a confirmation either way, right? What we do know is that they landed in an area that is outside of Russia's stable control, right? Not in the city of Pokrovsk, but to the north of Pokrovsk, right? In the Pokrovsk area. And they landed right in what is, in terminology, I think we've talked about it before, a kill zone, right? So when mappers are doing their geostrategic their locations, using satellite data and videos to geolocate videos, they have areas of Russian control, they have areas of Ukrainian control, and they traditionally have areas that are in the gray zone, right? Where there's fog of war, where there's ongoing fighting, and it's not quite clear who has the upper hand, right? Which is usually those areas are usually pretty small. Well, a few months ago, they started adding a new designation, and they called these kill zones. And these are areas where there is so much
Mark will be back. He'll be back. He'll be back. Come on. I believe in you. I believe in you. Okay, Mark will be back. He's freezing for the moment. Okay, Mark will be back. I'll bring it back on when I see him moving in the bottom of the screen. Okay. Yeah, he'll be back. He's just gone dark. This was a disaster. This was a disaster, even by Ukrainian channels, in the way that Ukrainian channels were effectively talking about it. Even they were talking about it as a complete and utter disaster.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, there you are. I can hear you. Perfect.
Okay. So a kill zone, right, where the FPV drone activity is so high that troops, until the situation changes, don't really have a chance to survive, right? And usually the way to deal with a kill zone is either to go around it, right, to flank it at maybe some considerable distance, or using data gathered through your own drones or satellites or possibly through electronic warfare measures to identify where the opponent's drones are being operated out of, and using long-range strikes to get rid of those drone operators. Because I imagine that a significant quantity of electronic warfare, right, that is primed for the type of drones that are being used in that area might succeed as well. Except on the Russian side, the use of fiber optic cables is so high that may not work for the Ukrainians. And basically, their electronic warfare, NATO electronic warfare, is not as good anyway. But they landed them inside a kill zone on the outskirts of Pokrovsk. To what purpose? Well, I mean, it's clear that they weren't meant to engage brigades worth of Russian troops. They were obviously there for a special forces mission, right? Which is almost certainly something to do with this extraction, right? They were there to get someone or something, probably someone, out. So they were supposed to meet someone there. The Russians knew they were coming. So we can presume that they did not get whoever it is that they were supposed to out. At least one of the three helicopters, 2 or 3 helicopters, is confirmed destroyed. I don't know about the others. And we have videos of at least the first crew of special forces being literally hunted down by drones minutes after they arrived, landed and got off the helicopter and to a man, literally killed. Really stupid, suicidal. So, I mean, we're also told that this mission was so important that this was a mission by the Kiev regime's military intelligence, the GUR. Yeah. And we're told that it was so important that Kyrylo, I like the dark Budanov, the sociopathic leader of the GUR, was himself personally leading this. And I don't know what that means. Is he still with us? I mean, I know the man has 9 lives, or he had 9 lives. I think he's down to about 3 at this point, right? I don't know, what his condition is, whether he was on one of those, whether that is, that terminology is like, well, he was in the air.
On the helicopter.
Yeah. Was he on one of the helicopters? We don't know. I mean, he used to do that, right? I mean, that he actually came out of the new Kiev regime's special forces post the putsch in 2014. And the U.S. liked him so much that he was elevated up through the ranks, because, as the New York Times has bragged to us, the U.S. came in after the U.S.-backed putsch in Ukraine and completely rebuilt their intelligence services from the ground up, and they liked him and they promoted him up through the ranks. But he used to lead special forces mission. This is why I think he focuses as a military intelligence head much more on covert operations than he does on actually doing military intelligence and assessments of enemy military forces. Take that for what you want. But it had to be something like that. It was obviously not meant to change the fate of what was going on in Pokrovsk. They were supposed to secure someone or something. It does not appear that they did so. And it appears that they paid an extremely high price for it. It also appears that the Russians knew they were coming and waited and lied in wait for them.
Wow. Which means they knew the target that was on the ground, or they had to have some idea of who they were going to get on the ground for them to be waiting for it.
My pure speculation, right? We're already well into speculation because we don't know what their mission was, but I think it's common sense that, they weren't there to, participate in some type of unblocking operation or anything like that.
Now with 22 men, no. Yeah.
Where do you send 2 or 3 squads of special forces with potentially even the head of military intelligence involved in? I mean, who is that important? To me, it could only be a Western military officer.
Yeah.
That is the only that you would risk that much for, that you would go to that extent to get someone out. That is the only thing it says to me.
And to do it twice in
Yeah.
a similar, if not the same location, 2 days later, as if, this is lightning and it's not going to strike twice in the same spot. It seems that the Russians were effectively just laying in wait.
Yep.
Watching the entirety of the thing. Yeah, this was extremely expensive, to put it mildly, which means that high value target is still on the ground. I mean, ideally, I would think.
Maybe the Russians picked it up, it or he, or, I guess she.
Well, we don't want to be sexist, he or she.
We don't, yeah.
Wow. The situation with Cross seems to be getting worse. There were some Ukrainian channels that was talking about.
Well, I mean, that depends entirely on your perspective. I think the situation in Pokrovsk looks excellent, but I mean,
from the Ukrainian position,
from the
Ukrainian point of view, that noose seems to be getting tighter and tighter. From a hangman's point of view, the noose getting tighter is perfectly fine, right? But their situation on the ground seems to be getting progressively worse. And there's
as of the beginning of the weekend, right, there was a 1 kilometer gap in the Russian forces in one area, and that was the only way out. And that's not through a road; that is through empty fields that were, for lack of a better word, haunted by drones, right, at kill zone. And I've seen Rubicon, right, the Russian premier drone operators operations center. I did an in focus video on them on my own channel a couple of months ago. They put out lists over the weekend that are just video after video after video after video after video after, just ad nauseum, just stretching whole pages worth of FPV video footage, and it's all manpower. And what it is them hunting down Kiev regime troops one by one that are attempting to slip out through that 1 kilometer gap, usually at night. Most of those are, done with night vision, thermal imaging. And I mean, that's grim even for me. I don't want to watch that because it's so desperate. It's so bad. I mean, of course they have to do that. If they surrendered, the situation would be different, but they're not surrendering, right? Which means they're going to come back again someday, and they could kill you or the guy next to you, right? So if they're not surrendering, even if they're running away, they have to be dealt with, no matter the circumstances. But whoever the Kiev regime's military and political leadership that first of all waited so long for to attempt to extract them, never, right? They never ordered a retreat. A retreat has never been ordered in Pokrovsk. And then just refusing to order them to lay down their weapons and surrender in a hopeless situation, right? Where they're probably out of ammunition, they're out of food, they're out of water, right? They're for all intents and purposes completely physically surrounded. It's an absolutely hopeless situation, and it shows the ideological zeal in the Kiev regime's political leadership, and it does not bode well for any conception that there could be a diplomatic end to this conflict. At any point down the road,
the Russians just wait them out until they do surrender. The Russians eventually invade. What
no, they have to stay. They're just going to have to take it all.
No, what I mean is, like, while those men are effectively boxed in, let's say 10,000 men in Kupiansk and Pokrovsk.
Oh, they clear them bit by bit. Those
slowly encroach.
Yeah, I mean, they have to, identify them. They'll bring down the buildings if necessary. Hopefully they can target, them smaller than that. target them with drones, artillery, and then eventually, if there's anything left, then they'll go in and clear room by room. That's one of the reasons why it takes so long. I mean, people are always, oh, why Russia? Why doesn't Russia finish it earlier? Why, like they're intentionally dragging it out. I mean, it's sometimes a combination of attention deficit disorder, way too much Hollywood and Call of Duty, and just not a conception about the correlation of forces. That no matter how many advantages Russia has, that ultimately things still need to be slogged out on the ground with a troop of an opponent that is largely not surrendering, right? Now, part of that reason they're not surrendering is quite obviously, I've seen enough videos of it, that they kill anyone of their own who tries to surrender, right? If not right there, then with drones, as they attempt to do so, or artillery, or I've even seen HIMARS used to do that, which means the Americans were fully participating in it. They'll do anything, but you still have to go room by room, building by building, settlement by settlement, room by room. And Ukraine is a big country. People don't have an idea of that. And while Russia has an advantage in manpower and an advantage in drones and an advantage in artillery and fabs and everything, NATO is still providing enough support to their proxy forces here that it is still a war of attrition, right? It takes time. That's the realities of modern, or I don't know if we're in modern warfare or are we in future warfare.
Like
I'm not sure.
This seems like postmodern, especially with the new missile systems that Russia is putting out. These things are like science fiction. Like if you saw them in a science fiction movie, you'd be impressed. This is not a science fiction movie. This is real world phenomena. I mean, when Pokrovsk falls, in fact, all of these locations are going to fall. Pokrovsk, Leningrad, Kupiansk, Seversk, etc. When these fall in order like this, do you think there are going to be political consequences as a result of losing these territories back to back to back to back in this way?
I mean, not that we think of as political consequences. I mean, I question what will be the damage to Zelensky's obviously eroding grasp of sanity. That I question. But it's not like the Kiev regime has politics as normal. They have been an ineffective dictatorship, right? For years now. Even within the Maidan milieu, Zelensky has long shut down even any other potential Maidan political opponents. Over the last few weeks, he's been going after even anyone who dares having an outside his immediate approval. They went after the mayor of Odessa and stripped him of citizenship over obviously false pretexts that at one point he had Russian citizenship, when the truth is that every Kiev regime official, every one of these people has citizenships in multiple countries, right? Right. Ukraine, Russia, Cyprus, Israel, usually in several countries, but they use that to go after him. And when questioned about that, Zelensky says, "I don't care if they were fake." He literally said that.
What?
I said, "I don't care if the reasons we went after him were false."
What?
Yes. So, I mean, and the Western media has even reported about this, right? Politico did a piece on it over the last week about his growing authoritarianism. I'm like, well, that's nice of you to have finally noticed, but that's only within the scope, of course, of the Maidan milieu, when they were going after the the entire eastern half of the country's politics that didn't agree with the Maidan, and banning dozens of political parties, and shutting down media outlets, and declaring the leaders of half a dozen political parties with treason and everything else. They didn't question the authoritarianism, right? But when it's against other potential pro-Western political forces within the Maidan milieu, then suddenly someone recognizes the authoritarianism at work. So that it's just eating popcorn for me. As
What is
far as
Dmitry Krylev doing in the United States?
I
am confused by why he's here. I got to be honest, why he's there, I should say. What is he trying to accomplish? I give me your take on this.
Yeah. I don't have the slightest idea what he's doing here, to be honest. Maybe, I don't know. I miss the Southern barbecue. Maybe he's there for some barbecue. Because there's no chance of anything diplomatic at this point. Quite obviously, if there was ever any chance, right, that has obviously been ended. What this whole farce was with, we're going to send Tomahawks. No, we're not going to send Tomahawks. But yes, we are. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Hey, let's meet in Budapest. Nope, sorry. Plans changed. I can't meet you in Budapest after you already, the person asking. It's such a farce. It's quite obvious that the Trump administration doesn't know what the hell they're doing. There's no agreement within the administration, much less between the administration and the blob, the deep state. Trump doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's desperate. He's scrambling. We heard him make comments over the weekend that Putin and Xi Jinping, they're tough guys. They're tough, smart guys, and they're not to be played games with. Well, what the hell have you been doing for the last 6 months? Because that's all you've been doing is playing games. And usually they haven't ended too well for you. But this administration's foreign policy is such an incoherent train wreck. And Dmitry Trenin did a piece that was. I'm not a huge fan of Dmitry Trenin as far as Russian foreign policy experts go. I think he was a little, but back, I remember when he was, one of the, shall we say, pro-Western Russian analysts, and he literally wrote a book, The Ends of Eurasia. The end of Eurasia, meaning the end of the idea of Eurasia as a geopolitical
just
concept.
The idea in general.
Idea of Eurasia, because it was obvious that Russia was going to be a part of the West, right? I mean, that was obvious. I remember, being incensed and just risible when he published that book. So anyway, I don't have a very high conception of the guy. He's tacked to the current political zeitgeist, and has rebranded himself as a patriot and even a Eurasianist of sorts. But he actually had a good piece. It was in the Russian media. It was reprinted in RT, and it talks about Trump's diplomacy. It was out a few days ago, so in the last week. But basically noting that Trump's foreign policy seems to be primarily driven by his own sense of vanity and narcissism, and his pursuit of PR, right? Particularly domestically inclined, but rather than any type of coherent, foreign policy vision or anything like that. That his foreign policy is first and foremost about Trump, and how he can spin or take advantage of any given situation. That's the prism through which he looks at the world.
That's true, but I think Trump is in a weird space. I mean, like, under normal circumstances, the United States can impose its will. It can't do it here. It can't do it with China. And so it's like, if you If you're no, have you ever played Street Fighter? Is Street Fighter 2? There was characters that would have one move where they could do like this knee kick, and you can take characters out with the knee kick. And imagine for the moment that you can't do the knee kick anymore, and you're like, okay, what do I do? I can't go to my go-to. My go-to is the bully. Okay, well, I can't bully the Russians. I can't bully the Chinese. And so what you end up with is him being cowed by the Chinese, where they effectively humiliate him, and he has to basically go back to this kind of status quo at a disadvantage. And with the
but you
Russians,
still have to strut around and declare victory, right?
exactly. That's my point, right? Like, so what you end up with is a foreign policy that's built purely, entirely on vanity. Oh, I'm going to have the Budapest summit. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to send the tomahawks. I'm not going to send the tomahawks. Meaning he's limited in regards to what he can do in a foreign policy sense. So the best that he got
but he's limited in all sorts of ways. Limits in the U.S. capability of as you said, enforcing its will on. I mean, it can still obviously do that. The number of countries that Trump gloated that lined up to literally, in his own words, kiss his ass, kiss my ass, right, over the question of tariffs. And now you have this, the challengers, right? That Russia, yes, China, Iran, and he's also failed to exert his will on India, Indonesia, and others over the issues of trade and right, so forth. But there's also limitations of what he can do via the deep state in the United States, right? Because they obviously, limit his there's an acceptable range of his foreign policy, shall we say, maverickism, right? That they will tolerate, and then there's outside the bounds, and obviously, having some type of détente with Russia was not within those bounds, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they ordered him that he couldn't do that, but they have various levers of control and manipulation. And when they present policy options, it's A and B and C, and ends up having very little difference, and you don't ever get to choose D or E, right? I mean, they're not even presented. That's the way that type of control is done. John Bolton, Trump's previous official during his first administration, in his own book, he talked about and gloated and boasted about the way that they manipulated him, and that's from someone within his own administration, right? That he brought on, much less the rest of the blob, the deep state. So there's multiple ways at which what he can do is limited, both geopolitically and politically.
Interesting. Oh, I didn't read John Bolton's book. I didn't. That is a difficult mind to try to work your way through. I appreciate that you did it.
And you must know the mind of your enemy. I mean,
I get that, but Jesus, John Bolton is a lunatic's lunatic. So no, I feel you on that one. Yeah, he's limited. He's in this box. It's like, all right, I can't bully him. If I get the tomahawks, Putin may respond in a way that's going to be overwhelming. So what do I do? Oh, I know, I dance. And so he becomes a spring chicken. Oh, I'll pass sanctions. I'll do that. That's what I'll do. He's limited. And so it comes across looking just garbled. Like Joe Biden, at the very least, had a direction that Joe Biden always wanted to go. Trump,
or Blinken and Sullivan had a direction that they wanted to go, and they got the auto pen to sign off in that direction. Right?
right. Tell me about the sanctions. Will the sanctions have any real effect in Russia? I mean, I've heard some Russian analysts that made the argument that they were going to have some level of effect. No, they weren't going to.
The sanctions always have some level of effect, right? But Russia has long assumed that these sanctions were going to be imposed, evidently, and they already have workarounds, right? Now in some situations with some customers, they literally have to, work out the plans that they already have, right, to implement them, to go around. But this is what has always been done. The sanctions always are an inconvenience, right? They're never without any cost or any consequences. But, ultimately, um, the Indians are still buying Russian oil. They just placed big orders for December after these are due to come into effect, and have made various statements. That first of all, it's not even Russian oil that has been sanctioned. It's companies and transports. And as they pointed out, we don't buy our oil from the Russians. We buy our oil from middlemen, right? They've long planned for these things. They've already been buying, not directly from the Russians. We know, everyone knows that they're buying from the Russians, and everyone knows the Europeans are buying from them, which means the Europeans are buying from the Russians. Everyone's playing this shell game of middlemen, right? Everyone knows what's going on. But now they may need an extra layer of middlemen in there somewhere, right? That may be decided, right? And for India, in particular, China doesn't even care. For India, all right, it will involve. India has a little bit weaker, economic situation, but they still have enough room for maneuver, and they've got both a state. They've got, several oil concerns, but the two primary is Reliant, which is and Reliance, which is a privately owned oil company, and Indian Oil, which is their big state concern. And so they will be approaching, the problem of how to go around it, maybe slightly differently. But, obviously those measures are already being put into place. Right. And primarily, there's different levels that India is operating here, but one of the levels that they're operating is below the issue of, say, geopolitics and sovereignty, and simply on, well, it's in our national and business interests to buy the oil that is cheaper.
Right.
That has been the Russian oil, and that is having that access to that oil has been our way of keeping energy prices down, which has helped to ameliorate the problems with inflation. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but there's been a global inflation crisis, like global, right? Like for over a year now. Everyone's been dealing with it to one degree or another, and it has somewhat been isolated in India through the use of Russian energy. Right. And it's the Europeans who cut themselves off from Russian energy that are paying the extra cost on that particular one. But that has, of course, political effects, right? Because it helps the Modi, government, keep, their political advantage in the country, because the situation could be worse. Whereas in the United States, inflation and inevitably falls on those in power, and now that's Trump. So he's got midterm elections coming up, and he's gone to. I'm certain that he could, and I know there are plans for further Russian energy sanctions to complicate the matter further. This is not the end, right? This is just a first salvo, a first real salvo. There have been some slight sanctions since Trump came into office, very quietly, but this is the first real salvo. But it's certainly not the last one.
Yeah,
they've got more options,
and they screwed over Orban royally, his buddy and friend.
Yeah, people talk about friendship. I don't know about all that. I don't know that statesmen are friends, right? Not in a situation, like that. Maybe if you regularly interact, like Putin and Xi Jinping do, you can speak of friendship, but there are no friends among statesmen, right? That's the interest. So I don't know about all that, but having any degree of trust in any U.S. leader, much less Donald Trump, I would say is a fool's game.
Yeah.
And the only one you're fooling is yourself. So, I know what did you expect? You play the game of, kowtowing to Trump and blowing smoke up his posterior and playing to his narcissism, and it works up until it doesn't. And Orban is now out in the cold on that one, and Trump said, "Yeah, he's my friend," and no, he's not getting an exemption. So
Right. Right. Yeah, that's brutal.